From our State House studio in Montgomery, I'm Todd Stacy. Welcome to Capitol Journal. It was a busy day here in the halls of state government as more than 20 committees met to consider legislation. The House and Senate bodies also met for the 9th legislative day. Some controversial issues were debated. We'll start in the Senate County and Municipal Government Committee, which took up the issue of diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI. Senate Bill 105 from State Senator Will Barfoot of Montgomery would prohibit certain public entities, including K-12 schools and universities, from housing a DEI office or program. It would also prohibit the teaching or promotion of what's termed divisive concepts related to race or gender. Republicans argue that such DEI programs have led to colleges in other states promoting a woke ideology. Democrats push back aggressively, saying diversity, equity, and inclusion training is needed not just in college, but in other institutions.
You cannot compel someone to believe or assent that one race or sex, or there's a whole host of categories, are better than the other or worse than the other. I would think that those divisive concepts and the fact that we can't use from at an educational level or state tax dollars level, that we should not be spending state tax dollars or educating our children or trying to tell them that one race or sex is better than the other.
That's why we need DEI training here. We had a colleague on the House side who sent out an email, and it was supposed to be a joke, and it was about some Democrats, and it had monkeys with bananas. It shut down the House of Representatives that day. He apologized also.
And I'm praying about a letter that I penned to resign from the Senate because I can't do things like this. My mother said to me last night, she apologized for what I said yesterday. I said, Mama said that, I thought we fought these battles already.
Those are heartfelt comments. So it tugs at your heart, and but I think some of the concerns that have been levied against the bill will not happen. I mean, legislation like this has happened in other states, and there's certainly not been the unintended consequences in those states that some are fearful of.
The bill advanced out of committee in a 7-3 vote and could come to the Senate floor as soon as tomorrow. The House Judiciary Committee convened today for its regular meeting, but the subject matter drew a much larger crowd than usual. That subject, gender and women's rights. House Bill 111 from State Representative Susan DuBose of Hoover is dubbed the What is a Woman Act. It would codify into state law the biological definitions of men and women. DuBose and bill supporters said it is needed to protect women in a world of gender fluidity. But the bill drew criticism from LGBT activists who called the bill discriminatory.
This bill, HB 111, is a definitions bill. It codifies the time-honored definitions of male, female, man, woman, boy, girl, mother, father, and sex. It is important to acknowledge in this bill that sex is defined as the state of being male or female at birth. Sex is objective and fixed.
I share my experience today to explain why it is so important for Alabama legislature to pass this bill. Because if passed, this bill would guarantee that when, and only when, the state designates space for women, only females may enter them. How does this do this? By defining common sex-based words like woman and female, which are already used in 160 unique Alabama statutes, by codifying the meaning of these words, we protect our laws from being manipulated by those who would gaslight women into thinking their privacy is bigotry. Let me be clear, this bill does not erase transgender people. It simply ensures that laws enacted to protect opportunities and spaces that states sets aside for women and girls do what they were intended to do.
HB 111 attempts to adopt a discriminatory, unworkable definition of sex aimed at excluding marginalized LGBTQ Alabamians from state protections, with a particularly harmful impact on our transgender Alabamians. It will also have the unintended consequence of making it harder for all women to utilize state non-discrimination laws to address sexual harassment and sex stereotyping. This is direct and blatant discrimination, and it's unconstitutional, plain and simple.
No vote was taken on that bill since it was just a public hearing. It could come up for a vote in committee next week. The Judiciary Committee also took up the issue of guns, and specifically devices that can be attached to handguns to convert them into de facto machine guns. House Bill 36 from State Representative Philip Ensler of Montgomery would prohibit such devices and set penalties for those caught with converted weapons. Ensler explained the bill to members of the committee.
And a very similar one came up in committee last year and passed, but the one last year did not mirror federal law. So with this version this year, it mirrors federal law, but then has some language in there to address some of the questions or concerns. Big picture, I've heard from law enforcement throughout the state that have been picking up weapons with these devices on them, but there's currently no state crime that prohibits them. They're only prohibited under federal law. So this would just add a tool to the toolbox on the state level when it comes to weapons with these devices. The two changes in the substitute, on line 61, we added in explicit language that says that any parts that are licensed under federal law would be exempt. So they're already exempt, but we just explicitly put that in. And then the second part, on line 48, we just put language clarifying that it's not possession of the device itself, but it's possession of the firearm that has the device on it.
I do have a question, however, on the penalty piece.
Sure.
Under first violation, it's punishable by not less than 100 hours of community service. That second subsequent violation jumps to a felony. That's a pretty big leap between those two. Can you talk to me about that first violation, why we've set it so low at community service?
Yeah, so the feedback that I've gotten from law enforcement is that it's often younger people, younger adults that have these. They maybe have seen on social media or heard that they're popular and they're getting their hands on them. So the first time around, what we would want to do is to steer them towards mentorship programs, maybe working with clergy to steer away from that culture of gun violence. But then the second time around, it's telling them, well, hey, this is there's going to be an even more severe consequence.
That bill was advanced by the committee and now goes to the full House. The House Education Policy Committee took up a bill that's been around for a while, but might finally be getting its shot to pass this year. Known as the First Grade Readiness Bill, House Bill 113 from State Representative Peblin Warren of Tuskegee would require children to either attend kindergarten or demonstrate the necessary proficiency before entering the first grade. Warren has carried the bill for several years, but now believes the message of early school readiness will finally win over her colleagues this time around.
This, I believe, is the easiest that it's passed so far.
Yes, like I said, I'm going to go back and see how many years I've done this. But like I said, I had it in my heart. And I think these people are now seeing, my colleagues are seeing, that I am more than playing politics. This is something that I believe in. This is something that is truly in my heart. I don't think a child should have to get to the third grade to be repeated because they can't read. We got to start earlier. And, if you look internationally, everybody starts their kids much earlier than we start them in the United States. If you take a child and put them in the first grade, they've never had to sit in class in order. They've never had to raise their hands to do anything. They've never been in a line to go and get a tray and eat. It's just an experience that they've never had. So all we're trying to make sure is that we can give the students a solid foundation so they can be ready when they start in the first grade.
That bill passed committee and now goes to the full House. Let's take a look at some of the other notable bills that moved in committee today. Senate Bill 24 from Senator April Weaver and House Bill 82 from Representative Mike Shaw would increase the penalties for falsely reporting a crime. These bills are coming in the wake of the Carly Russell false kidnapping ordeal last year. Senate Bill 89 from Senator Roger Smitherman. This would set restrictions for walking or loitering near busy highways. Smitherman says the bill is meant to protect pedestrians and drivers. Senate Bill 57 from Senator Arthur Orr would prohibit picketing and protesting near the residence of public officials. This comes in the wake of protests at Supreme Court justices' homes and at least an attempt to do the same at Attorney General Steve Marshall's home a few years ago. House Bill 103 from Representative Kenneth Pascal would revamp the Alabama Code section dealing with Veterans Affairs, including how veterans pursue claims. And Senate Bill 59, also from Orr. This would require CPR training in K-12 public schools. And it's not random. During a visit to Korea last year, Orr performed CPR on his colleague, Senator Tim Melson, during a medical emergency and literally saved his life. It's quite a story. I hope to have them on the show soon to talk about it. So those were the highlights from legislation moving around the State House today. One high-profile issue that is idle for the moment is the comprehensive gambling package passed by the House last week. Senators say they want to take their time with the legislation and review it. State Senator Greg Albritton, who is carrying the package in the Senate, says his colleagues are in the process of asking questions, many about where the gambling revenue would be directed.
The more we discuss, the closer we get. The more we explain and go through where we are, because look, we've been working on this for this particular bill, if you will, for 10 years. And many of the folks that have these questions haven't been involved in a lot of that. And the cost, and even some questions have come up as to the criminal aspects of it. And so those we got to deal with. And all of these we've talked about in previous meetings and hearings into the development process, but the members have got to be assured that we've dealt with their issues.
More reverberations from the recent Alabama Supreme Court ruling that says frozen embryos can be considered children under state law in civil lawsuits. The UAB health system announced today that it is pausing its in vitro fertilization treatments as it and other healthcare providers weigh the risks of being sued as a result of the ruling. In 2018, the Alabama legislature passed and voters ratified a constitutional amendment that made it the policy of the state to protect the rights of unborn children, which is in part what the ruling relied on. We'll be right back with tonight's guests.
You can watch past episodes of Capital Journal online at video.aptv.org. Capital Journal episodes are also available on APTV's free mobile app. You can also connect with Capital Journal and link to past episodes on Capital Journal's Facebook page. And you can listen to past episodes of Capital Journal when you're driving or on the go with Capital Journal podcasts.
Welcome back to Capital Journal. Joining me next is State Senator Jack Williams from Mobile County. Senator, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I wanted to have you on because you've got an interesting piece of legislation this session. I guess it passed earlier through the Senate. Has to do with artificial meat and restricting the importation and just the production of artificial meat. What is artificial meat and why does it require legislation?
They're making this artificial meat out of cells from animals. The only two plants so far are in California, and they're making chicken, but it's on the go to come here and everywhere else. It's made of nothing. I mean, we don't know what this product's going to do. We don't know how it's going to affect the people. We don't know how it's going to affect our kids later on, if they started eating it at 10, if they're going to be able to reproduce or anything. I mean, we know nothing about it. There have not been enough of study on it.
So you say cells, they take a cell and clone it, things like that?
Yeah, they clone it, put it in a big vat, a big metal vat is what they usually use, and then it makes a big tub of meat.
Okay.
The chickens does not have any bone in it or nothing, it's just chicken meat.
Okay. So you're saying there's just not enough, research, testing, information out there to trust this to be completely safe?
There's not, and right after I done it, NASA contacted me, and they want to be able to research it. So we are going to add down in the House, which it may have been on the calendar today. If it's not, it's tomorrow. But in committee, and it will pass out of committee because this has been a big support from the House and the Senate on it. So I expect it to be on the floor down there in a couple of weeks by then anyway.
What comes to mind is like, you know, imitation crab meat and things like that you see at the grocery store. Is that the same kind of thing?
No, because the imitation crab meat's made out of fish.
Okay.
This is made out of a sail. I mean, it has nothing to do with nothing but sales. I mean, and I mean,
it's not
I
like
don't
a hot
understand
dog
how
where
they
they're
do
taking
it.
different things. It's just
No,
completely.
it's not a byproduct.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, and that's what scares me. People have accused me of doing it because I'm a cattle farmer and stuff, but that has nothing to do with it. This is just bad for us.
Yeah. What do you say to critics who say, well, look, you're just trying to protect your business for, you know, cattle farming and everything?
Well, I say I gifted my grandson to cattle farm and all before this bill ever came up, and you know, it's not going to affect me any on what I receive, but it may other farmers. But they claim we will be our population will double by 2050, and there will not be enough of meat products on the market. But I disagree. We can always up our production.
Well, it's certainly going to be a bill to watch, and I mean, it's got an interesting title, Frankenstein.
That's my title for it, Frankenstein meats.
Okay, well, we'll certainly watch the debate on that going forward. While I have you, you also have a bill having to do with trying to make fencing for ranchers, you know, farmers, more affordable by untaxing it. Talk about this.
I want to get the taxes off of it because the farmers, and it's just the farmers, we do a lot of fencing off for feral hogs now to keep them out of our crops, out of our hay fields, everything. It's gotten so expensive, the taxing will help save a lot of money. And the states around us, almost every state has it.
Oh, really?
Alabama is one of the few. Florida, Mississippi, I mean, everything right on top of us has it. Like I can go to Mississippi and buy it, and you know.
The physical fencing, the metal and the stakes and all
metal
that.
posts, the wire, all different kind of wires, just everything. A lot of the fencing we put double electric fences around. I mean, it's just whatever you can do to keep animals out of your crops.
So you're saying these are fences that wouldn't need to be built except for the feral hog problem that we have? Mostly.
I mean, that's a big majority of what's in. The cattle farmers and all, I mean, most of them already have their fencing up and all, I mean, like us.
But you don't need a fence for row crops, but you do now because of feral
hogs.
Interesting.
I mean, on my own personal place, we caught over 1,000 feral hogs last year.
Wow.
And that's not counting what we shot and all.
Sure.
That's just in 2 metal traps.
Well, anytime you want to touch taxes, that means revenue, so that can be a controversial issue. Do you see this advancing?
I do. I had, I think, 26 senators sign the bill.
Okay.
Both sides of the party line. So I've talked to Orr. I see it going. I mean, they've got a lot of other stuff on there that's cutting taxes. And last year I had the bill, but it was so many tax cuts that I promised him I would not push it at all.
Right.
This year he has got me in committee next week, so I feel a lot better about it.
Well, another bill to watch. Well, Senator, we'll be watching going forward, and thanks again for coming on the show and explaining these pieces of legislation.
Thank you for inviting me on the show to explain it.
Absolutely. We'll be right back.
You can watch past episodes of Capitol Journal online anytime at Alabama Public Television's website, aptv.org. Click on the Online Video tab on the main page. You can also connect with Capitol Journal and link to past episodes on Capitol Journal's Facebook page.
Welcome back to Capitol Journal. Tomorrow, Thursday, is Higher Ed Day here at the State House. And joining me next to talk about it is Executive Director of the Higher Ed Partnership, Gordon Stone. Gordon, thanks for coming on Capitol Journal.
It's a pleasure as always. You do a good job.
Well, look, tomorrow, Higher Education Day, it's always exciting when thousands of students from all around Alabama's public colleges and universities converge here at the State House at the Capitol Complex to rally, to meet with their lawmakers. Tell us what we have in store for this Higher Ed Day.
Well, it's the most exciting day during the legislative session by all measures. We have a band leading a parade where students will march down from behind Crampton Bowl over to the State House. That'll be from 10:30 till around 11-ish. We'll We'll do about 11:15, we'll do a pledge board signing where all the SGA presidents and their mascots will commit to working together to try to make Alabama better and to working with our elected officials, something we like to do each year to show our desire to be partners in progress for the state. And then we'll move over to a lunch tent there on the Circle of Flags lawn of the Capitol, where we'll hear from constitutional officers, legislators, key members of the funding committees, key members of the education policy committees will all be there. But more than anything, all of these students representing all 14 of Alabama's public universities will be there to have conversations with their elected officials. So proud of our students. They've been working hard to prepare for this. They've had workshops to make sure they understood the issues. They've had local meetings with their legislators. And now they're coming down here really prepared to understand how advocacy works and to implement that understanding by having those meaningful conversations. But great timing, you know, the budgets are still in motion. We're trying to make sure we're included there. We're trying to make sure we're included in the scholarship programs that are being discussed, trying to make sure that we have good understanding of the application of a couple other policy issues. So excited about having everybody here, thrilled about the energy it'll bring, and the important message that universities are valuable resources for our state.
Speaking of messages, your op-ed this week, you talked about, you know, as the state really focuses on workforce development, it's really kind of the watchword this year.
Absolutely.
That, hey, don't forget that it's not just, you know, we also need professional jobs. We need to think of the universities and the jobs to recruit those type of jobs. I'm kind of fumbling it, but you talk about that message.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. You know, it's really important that we recognize that an economy is not made up of one sector. Our economy is made up of multiple sectors, particularly in a state like Alabama that is as diverse geographically as we are, natural resource diversity across our state. And if we're going to take advantage of all of those resources, take advantage of all those opportunities, we have to prepare a workforce at all levels. We've done a great job recruiting manufacturing, some 86,000 new manufacturing jobs, I think the governor said. So that's wonderful. We're preparing people for those jobs, but we also have a huge workforce, 180,000 students on our campuses, ready and looking at ways to be invested in Alabama for the long term. And we just need to recruit jobs for them. So when you think about workforce, we want to make sure that those young people in our schools are thinking about the whole array of possibilities that are out there. You know, if they want to be a pilot, if they want to be an engineer, if they want to be a doctor, if they want to design and build the next computer system that helps us connect with the world economy, whatever it is, our institutions are prepared to help build that part of the economy, and we want to make sure that as we talk about workforce, what comes next is really the choice of the student and the dream being fulfilled.
What comes next? Yeah, right, that was the title. Well, speaking of timing, it was also interesting that today, or I guess yesterday, with this bill about diversity, equity, and inclusion dropped, and there was a committee hearing today. I saw you spoke at that. This would affect colleges and universities big time, maybe more than most. So what was your message to senators as this bill starts its way through the legislative process?
Well, first, let me say thank you to Senator Barfoot for being open and having conversations with our colleagues. You know, we represent 14 institutions. All 14 institutions have lobbyists here in the State House, and so they're all asking to be included in the dialogue, in the discussion as the bill's being crafted to its final form. So that's what we really asked for today. We asked the committee to make sure the process allows us to talk about all the various issues so they're not unintended consequences. Our institutions are committed to fulfilling their missions, and our missions are to challenge people to think, to grow, and to understand, you know, how we can be the best we can with the talent we've been given. And that's one of the things that makes a university education really valuable to the state, is how we develop during that course of that 4 years of learning. So we want to make sure that whatever policy is introduced here at the State House, that we have the opportunity to make sure that it enhances the capacity for us to fulfill our mission. So we'll see where it goes. I didn't really take a pro or against stance today, as much as let's get our voices at the table to make sure that we're in line with where we need to be to build this economy we just talked about. Again, we want 7th graders, when they start looking at where they're going to go, or 3rd graders when they start dreaming about their future, we want them to believe that whatever they want to do is possible. That dream can come true. When they think, what comes next for me, as you mentioned earlier, we want them to say, well, we can go to the 4-year, we can go to the 2-year, but those doors are open at both places, and their opportunity to build Alabama forward so that we are as diverse an economy, and all of our parts of our engine are pulling this train.
Well, that voice will be loud and clear tomorrow on the steps of the State House for Higher Ed Day. Gordon, we're out of time, but thanks again and good luck tomorrow.
Well, we invite everybody to come down. It'll be thousands of folks here. We'll be having a great time and delivering a very important message.
We won't miss it. Thanks again.
Great.
We'll be right back.
Established in 1953, Alabama Public Television was the first educational television network in the United States. With much of the state struggling to support standalone educational systems, Governor Gordon Persons encouraged the state legislature to establish APT to ensure access to educational television for all Alabamians. Among the early children's programs broadcast in the 1950s was Cabbages and Kings, written and produced by Auburn University. APT soon added programs for elementary schools, teacher instruction, and adult educational programs that were scheduled in the evening hours, along with national programming. Since then, 25 other states have established public television networks, all based on Alabama's model. Alabama Public Television's educational mission and national leadership continue today.
That's our show for tonight. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow night at the same time here on Alabama Public Television. For our Capitol Journal team, I'm Todd Stacy. We'll see you next time.